Welcome to Sino-Warfare with Ralph D. Sawyer.
Manipulating the enemy to create the conditions necessary to achieve victory is the core of Sunzi's approach to warfighting. Although the concept pervades the art of war, he explicitly asserts it just once in vacuity and substance. One who excels at warfare compels men and is not compelled by men. Now, maneuvering the army is one method to achieve this. In general, whoever occupies the battleground first and awaits the enemy will be at ease. Whoever occupies the battleground afterward and must race to the conflict will be fatigued. This concept is actually introduced in Initial Estimations, the Art of War's very first chapter. However, it's not framed in the broad terms seen in the later military writings, but instead in terms of specific actions.
Display profits to entice them. Create disorder and take them. If they are substantial, prepare for them. If they are strong, avoid them. If they are angry, perturb them. Be deferential to foster their arrogance. If they are rested, force them to exert themselves. If they are united, cause them to be separated. Attack where they are unprepared. Go forth where they will not expect it. These are the way military strategists are victorious.
Further discussions in other chapters reiterate these principles, sometimes in expanded form. The first, display profits to entice them, is the most fundamental of all, as well as the means often needed to implement the others. Thus, vacuity and substance states, in order to cause the enemy to come of their own volition, extend some profit. In order to prevent the enemy from coming forth, show them the harm. Strategic military power concludes, one who excels at moving the enemy deploys in a configuration to which the enemy must respond. He offers something that the enemy must seize. With profit, he moves them. With the foundation, he awaits them. And according to Nine Changes, another chapter title, this is thought to be a particularly effective way to manipulate the feudal lords, and therefore it's an essential measure for balking inimical plans. Sunzi says, subjugate the feudal lords with potential harm, labor the feudal lords with numerous affairs, and have the feudal lords race after profits. Now, the belief that a rested army is essential to combat success appears in a chapter called Military Combat. There, Sunzi advises, with the near, await the distant, with the rested, await the fatigued, and with the fated, await the hungry. In accord with the above behests, vacuity and substance asserts, if the enemy is rested, you can tire them. If they are well fed, you can make them hungry. If they are resting, you can move them. Go forth to positions to which they must race. Race for where they do not expect it. Now, of minor interest, the second instruction, create disorder and take them, is open to varying interpretation. Sunzi appears to be speaking about creating disorder in the enemy's ranks before initiating an attack, which is every commander's desire. However, in the context of deception, the sentence might be understood as creating the appearance of disorder in your own troops in order to lure the enemy into attacking you, perhaps prior to launching a pincer attack or springing an ambush. While reasonable, it's probably a case of inappropriately projecting later interpretations back into the text. Finally, if they are united, cause them to be separated. This reflects an ideal thought to have been realized in antiquity. According to Nine Terrains,
in antiquity, those who excelled in employing the army were able to keep the enemy's forward and rear forces from connecting, the many and few from relying on each other, the noble and lowly from coming to each other's rescue, the upper and lower ranks from trusting each other, the troops to be separated, unable to reassemble, or when assembled, not be well ordered.
segmenting the enemy remained an objective in Sunzi's time, but all of these measures were intended to achieve the localized tactical superiority known as chuan, something that makes victory possible. Now, the art of war is justly famous, or infamous in the view of purported Confucians and self-serving officials who condemned any deviation from righteousness, even when it was a matter of survival, for the assertion in its initial estimations that warfare is the Tao, or the way, of deception. It's reinforced with a comment in military combat. The army is established through deceit, moves for advantage, and changes through segmenting and reuniting. Numerous examples of how astute commanders employed deception to vanquish their enemies, often preliminary to implementing various unorthodox measures, might be cited. However, they'll have to wait for our talks on deception and the unorthodox in later centuries, or you can consult my recent book on the subject, Lever of Power, Military Deception in China and the West. Here, we might take note of several means suggested in The Art of War for deceiving the enemy. Although capable, feign being incapable. When committed to employing your forces, feign inactivity. When your objective is nearby, make it appear as if distant. When your objective is distant, create the illusion of it being nearby. Passages in the historical writings in The Art of War show that deception clearly predates Sun-tzu's era. In discussing how to evaluate frequently encountered phenomena such as trees moving or dust rising high up in a sharply defined column, Sun-tzu warns against being deceived. To take just a couple of examples from maneuvering the army, if there are many visible obstacles in the heavy grass, it's to make us suspicious. One who seeks peace without setting any prior conditions is executing a stratagem. And one whose troops half advance and half retreat is enticing you. And in military combat, Sun-tzu warns, do not pursue feigned retreats. While his admonition attests to the use of feigned retreats in his time, a Zhoujuan passage that coincidentally provides the first application of the crucial concept of qi indicates commanders were wary of being entrapped by fleeing forces considerably earlier. As I discussed in my CIA article, Chinese Conception and Approaches to Secrecy, Denial, and Obfuscation, which, as I mentioned, is freely downloadable from the CIA website, in Chinese military thought, deception plays a second, but hardly secondary, role in preserving secrecy, particularly in the form of disinformation. The Art of War, in fact, emphasizes the need for the commander to preserve secrecy in every possible way in order to be unfathomable, though there isn't any discussion of exploiting deception to cause doubt. Instead, deception is intended to get the enemy to do something or not do something, which has usually been the intent in most cultures. Another concept that looms large within the context of manipulating the enemy is being formless. As many critical Chinese military concepts, being without form was first discussed in almost incidental fashion in the Art of War chapter, Vacuity and Substance. When someone excels in attacking, the enemy doesn't know where to mount his defense. When someone excels at defense, the enemy doesn't know where to attack. It's so subtle, it approaches the formless. It's so spiritual, it attains the soundless. The image of formlessness, or more correctly, being without form, prompted highly esoteric discussions in subsequent centuries. It even continues to puzzle contemporary readers, sometimes even military professionals, when they first encounter the term. Whatever the connotations, it isn't synonymous with being invisible, but with the army simply not displaying any identifiable characteristics. That means being nebulous and amorphous to external observers, rather than deployed into recognizable formations, or undertaking activities that might betray the commander's intent. Unfortunately, how this can be achieved has to be the subject of another separate talk. Divergences apart, the chief objective is simply keeping the enemy ignorant, keeping them from discerning the reality behind visible phenomena, introducing uncertainty, and compelling them to wastefully expend their energy in mounting every conceivable defense. As seen in vacuity and substance, the art of war's thrust is quite explicit.
The location where we will engage the enemy must not become known to them. If it isn't known, the positions they must prepare to defend will be numerous. If the positions the enemy prepares to defend are numerous, then the forces we will engage will be few. If they prepare to defend the front, to the rear there will be few men. If they prepare to defend the rear, in their front there will be few. If they prepare to defend the left flank, then on the right there will be few men. If they prepare to defend the right flank, then on the left there will be few men. The few are the ones who prepare against others. The many are the ones who make others prepare against them.
Being formless surprisingly turns out to be the best way to compel the enemy to disperse their forces.
If I determine the enemy's disposition of forces while I have no perceptible form, I can concentrate my forces while the enemy is fragmented. If we are concentrated into a single force while they are fragmented into 10, we can attack them with 10 times their strength. Thus we are many and the enemy is few. If we can attack their few with our many, those who we will engage in battle will be severely constrained.
Clearly, as the art of war states, the pinnacle of military deployment approaches the formless. If it's formless, even the deepest spy cannot discern it, nor can the wise make plans against it. The question then becomes how to structure the battlefield and plan the attack for the greatest success. The answer is found in the intertwined concepts of shi, strategic power, and chuan, the tactical imbalance of power, which will be discussed in our next talk. As always, thank you for watching. And if you're so inclined, hitting the subscriber button, which I keep repeating, and costs you nothing, will help ensure our continued visibility.